The air turned damp and sticky as the coven of hags descended upon the band of adventurers. The Bladeslinger was the first to notice the danger approaching fast from the hill nearby. Each more terrifying looking than the other, the three disgusting crones filled the air with ominous crackling laughter, one that sent chills down any mortal's spine. The Bladeslinger quickly pointed out his companions in the right direction, and the troop charged their way in. The coven working in unison was a horrifying sight to be seen. The entire battle was one of arcane nature. The mage and the Bladeslinger engaged in a war of attrition with the coven, both sides heavily counterspelling each other. A few spells, however, slipped through. The hags managed to momentarily paralyze the barbarian, biting and clawing at him from head to toe. The rest of the adventurers, however, ganged up on the Anise hag. The Bladeslinger's discordant melodies finally reached her mind, making her scream in pain, turn her back, and briefly run away. The group used this opportunity to slash and hammer away at the mighty hag's back. The hag's retreat was followed by loud, booming magic going off on her, shattering her body into pieces. The remaining two hags, seeing how their big sister just fell apart, started fleeing away, screaming for their lives. The night hag quickly disappeared in a poof of mist, leaving the green hag alone. The party quickly jumped up on their warhorses, caught up with the green crone, and stomped all over her battered body. Alright everybody, today we have something a little bit more controversial, or let's call it just that. So yeah, something a bit more controversial at hand. It's the build that revolves around one particular bard spell, which we are going to cover just now for the sake of making disclaimers at the beginning, and then we can go our way. If you want to kill hags yourself, these green ugly looking bitches, you will like, share, comment and subscribe on this video, because this is the best channel ever. So yeah, that's what you do. Anyway, back to the topic. Now, the spell in question is obviously Dissonant Whispers, if you didn't conclude that from the intro. The spell, if you don't know, let's just quickly pull it up here. It actually it kind of like forces the creature to move away from you. So if you're engaged in a melee combat and then you cast Dissonant Whispers, and the creature that you cast Dissonant Whispers on fails the wisdom saving throw, it takes some psychic damage which scales by levels, and it must use its reaction to move as far as its speed allows away from you. Now, in a combination with Booming Blade, this is me not knowing English right here, yeah. In combination with Booming Blade, which states specifically that the target takes the additional damage if it willingly moves before the end of your next turn. Now, how do you actually interpret willing movement? Do you interpret it as a creature using its action, reaction, or a bonus action to move, or is that willing movement just based on the intent of the creature making the movement, right? So, page 195 of PHB specifically states that, for example, you don't provoke an opportunity attack when you teleport or when someone or something moves you without using your movement, action, or reaction. So in this particular case, this is obviously not a willing movement. But is it a willing movement if you use your reaction in this case? I would personally say it is. Now, Jeremy Crawford, the designer of this game, kind of doesn't, but I'm not the only one who kind of doesn't agree with him there are people all over the internet that are like, for example, this Battle Boost guy, giving a simple attack cantrip, giving Booming Blade the ability to sense intent of movement is ludicrous, and I would agree with him. How does, even if you suspend your disbelief and say, oh, it's all magic, yeah, it's all magic, but still, there are certain limits to that kind of magic, right? So the way I see this is Dissonant Whispers, it forces you to willingly use your, even though that doesn't make any sense when you say it like that, but it kind of like forces you to use your willing movement to move away from the creature, right? So even here on Reddit, there's a guy that shares my opinion. The question is whether the official sage advice, which links to this right here, this one of these two, does it actually, can the Booming Blade cantrip interpret the movement as intentional or unintentional, willing or unwilling? I would say it can't. If the Booming Blade detects the movement as one being made by the creature that the magic is engulfed in, then it's just the willing movement of that creature, regardless of the intent of the movement. So yeah, so this particular build heavily depends on your DM. If your DM allows you, that's why I always say ask your DM. If he or she allows you to use the combination as described in this instance right here, I would say go with it. So with that said, let's just quickly go over the features, characteristics and stuff like that, the usual stuff. Now first of all, obviously we are starting with the human variant. We are going to be maxing our dexterity and charisma and put the third ability into constitution. Now I always like to personally bump my wisdom with the remaining two point by points, but you can leave that weight and maybe bump intelligence or even strength. I like my wisdom at 10 just so that my perception skill is a little bit higher, because I like my perception to be as high as possible. Now that said, our main feat, our only feat that we need, that we will take, is going to be Warcaster feat, because with everything said earlier in this video, you are going to be heavily using and abusing all three parts of this feat. Now first of all, obviously you have advantage on constitution saving throws for your spells. You will be using this for your spells. You can perform the somatic components of spells even if you have no free hands, and you will be having all of your hands full of shields and weapons and whatnot. And finally, when a hostile creature's movement provokes an opportunity attack, you can use your reaction to cast a spell. We want this part to be able to cast Booming Blade at the creature. Now, what this does in a combination of how actually the where is it? Yeah, there it is. How the opportunity attacks work. Now, if you attack the creature with the Booming Blade, obviously, if you cast the Booming Blade on a creature, and that creature moves just 1 feet, the Booming Blade goes off, right? So that part is over. Now, the opportunity attacks actually happen when the creature moves out of your reach. So the creature needs to move more than 4 feet away from you, because your reach is 5 feet, right? So as soon as the movement gets out of your reach, you get to make that opportunity attack, which you can use to cast a Booming Blade cantrip. So in other words, as soon as the creature just moves 1 feet or more, the Booming Blade goes off, the one that you hit it with on your turn. Then on your reaction, you can again cast Booming Blade, hit it, hopefully, maybe you miss, but let's say you hit it. And then the Booming Blade portion of the spell of the cantrip goes off again. So you are proccing your Booming Blade 2 times here, because that's just how the mechanics work, right? You are not actually, it's not simultaneously. It goes first the booming blade goes off, then you cast the booming blade again, then the second booming blade goes off again. So yeah, this is the part that's definitely by the rules, if we agree on the previous points. With all of that said, the actual build is, as we said, obviously heavily relies on the Warcaster feat. You are going to be primarily a Sorcerer here, 13th level of Sorcerer, which will give you the Quicken Meta Magic, and a Shadow Sorcerer also gives you a Hound of Ill Omen, which is also pretty important, because it enables you to basically all of the targets that are within the 5 feet of the Hound have disadvantage on saving throws against your spells. So when you cast Dissonant Whispers, the target must make a Wisdom saving throw. Now, if the Hound of Ill Omen is next to the target has disadvantage on that saving throw, which heavily improves your chances, the chances of your Dissonant Whisper spell to actually succeed. And it just, from that point on, it becomes ridiculous, right? So that's from the Sorcerer. Quick and Meta Magic to be able to use your bonus action and your reaction every turn. Hound of Ill Omen, obviously you have 13 sorcery points. Strength of the Grave comes in handy, 120 feet Dark Vision, 3 ability score increases, and spell casting up to 14 spells known, and up to 7th level spells. Now, your Bard portion of the build is going to be a Sword Bard, a wise Sword Bard. We can go with the Whispers. Whispers technically does do more damage than the Sword, but I like Sword for the consistency and the ability to have some kind of versatility in combat. Now, you won't have to go with your maximum type of damage all the time. You will pretty much, like, for the majority of the time, especially later on when you get this, we are going to go over how I actually think you will level up your build. So it gives you the fighting style. You will obviously take dueling here. We are not 2-weapon fighting. It gives you some proficiencies with weapons and armor, and it gives you these 3 options, which give you an alternative way of spending your Bardic Inspiration. Now, your Bardic Inspiration, actually, you know how it works probably. If you don't, it's basically from your Bard level 5 onward, it's a short rest mechanic. At first it's a long rest only, which up to your Charisma modifier, D8 dice, gives one ally the ability to increase the ability check, attack roll, or a saving throw. That's all cool, but we want to be very, how do you say? I actually forgot the word. Very selfish, yeah. We want to be selfish here. We want to use all the Bardic Inspiration for ourselves. We don't have to, but we certainly can with this build. Now, these flourishes all add your Bardic Inspiration die to the damage rolls. But, for example, Defensive Flourish also adds that number to your AC until the start of your next turn. Slashing Flourish actually damages another creature that is next to the creature that you hit. And Mobile Flourish enables you to move the creature up to 5 feet away from you, plus a number of feet equal to the number you roll on the die. Now, these are all good. Primarily, you will be using the Defensive Flourish because you will be squishy. You will not have much HP. But yeah, I mean, there's nothing stopping you from using this when the situation arises, obviously. And obviously at 6th level, we get that extra attack, which is going to come in handy in the majority of situations when you are not casting Dissonant Whispers and stuff like that, right? So yeah, and 1 ability score increase, and counters charm from the just straight Bard feature, which is kind of non-optimized, but still can come in handy in some small amount of cases. Last but not least, we have our Hexblade, one of the best single class dips, subclass dips at first level, period, like at the moment, because it gives you so much at the first level that it's just almost a must-have for a majority of builds that revolve around charisma and doing Gish type of builds, right? So proficiency with medium armor, shields, martial weapons, you can carry anything, and the ability to use charisma with your attacks and damage rolls. For one weapon you touch every long rest, so there's that. Now Hexblade's Curse, a bonus action ability which recharges at the short rest, lasts for 1 minute, adds a proficiency bonus to damage rolls. Critical hits are on 19 and 20, and it can also heal you for a little bit when the target dies. Plus charisma. Charisma modifier, it's not 3, it's 6, right? So yeah, there's that. Now in terms of spells, Booming Blade, the cantrip, is the most important one because we want that feature that does damage when the target moves. We want a shield at first level, Dissonant Whispers obviously as well. Healing Word from Bard, pretty important as well, just so you can be able to not just damage but heal your damage the opponents, but heal your allies. Now with Hexblade, actually you can only learn like 2 spells, and I would say you also take Armor of Agathis and Hex. Hex is going to be one of those spells that you will be able to cast without spending Dissonant Whispers and Shadow Blade. Now in terms of Shadow Blade, it's a must for maxing your damage output. We've already talked about Shadow Blade in the first video on this channel, so go back to the channel and watch that video if you want. It's basically a spell that creates a weapon in your hand, lasts for 1 minute. It's also a bonus action, and it deals psychic damage, a lot of psychic damage, which in combination with this is going to be pretty important for maxing our damage. Mirror Image, obviously one of the most broken spells at low levels. It's not a concentration, so yeah, I mean you must have it in order to protect yourself. Now I would also take some of these spells and some of these cantrips. Not a must, but this is just my recommendation. The red ones are, in my opinion, must-haves. Obviously 3rd level Fireball. Counter spell, I would probably say it's also red, but it doesn't have to be. It's not really a must, but I would say, due to the fact that you will be most of the time in the thick of the combat, you will be in range to cast counter spell, so I'd say it's also almost a must. Obviously Bard's Leomon's Tiny Hut, one of the most amazing utility spells of all. From 4th level onward, I would say only Hold Monster, maybe 5th level spell. Nothing else pretty much is not a must. Even Disintegrate is not that. I mean, it's kind of red, but then it isn't. I don't know. Doesn't really matter. You can pick whatever you want. It's going to depend on the campaign and your party as well. Now, progression, 1st level Sorcerer, we want to be able to get that Booming Blade, Constitution saving throws, Warcaster feat, Shield spell, Dark Vision 120 feet. Now 2nd level we go straight Bard already. We get Light Armor proficiency, 1 extra skill, Bartok Inspiration, Dissonant Whisper spell, and a Healing Word. From level 2 onward we have some rudimentary form of what we want to be able to do with this build. So this build becomes viable very early on. Now 3rd level Warlock, we want to get a bit of increase to our damage and some versatility. We really don't want to cast Dissonant Whispers all the time. And Warlock gives us one short rest rechargeable spell slot, which we will be able to use for Hex spell or Armor of Agathis, or both, depending on your adventuring day. Now you also get a proficiency with shields, you get that Hexblade's Curse, which is amazing, and you get the Hex Warrior, which you will also be able to use due to the fact that we are primarily charisma oriented. Now Sorcerer, after that, up all the way up to level 8. We want to get Shadowblade on a 3rd level of Sorcerer. Quickened and Twin Meta Magics, pretty much a must have on this build. 8 sorcery points. Hound of Ill Omen, we already talked about it. One of the most important... wow, what's this? What? Okay, something broke, I don't know what. That's weird. Anyway, yeah, after 8 levels of Sorcerer, 6 levels of Bard, obviously, Jack of all trades, expertise, dueling, fighting style, +2 to Dex, Blade Flourish, and extra attack. After that, just max your Sorcerer up to 13. You get one more meta magic, you max your Dexterity, as well as your Charisma, which is already maxed. You get 13 sorcery points, and your multiclassing is going to be... You're going to be a 19th level multiclass spellcaster. So you will have access to all of the spell slots that you need. Now, in terms of damage, obviously we need to assume that you are fighting for... First of all, you're fighting in the dark or dim light, because that's when your Shadow Blade is able to give you advantage. That's when you have advantage with Shadow Blade. Now also we will assume that the big bad guy that you are fighting has more than, I don't know, like 1000 HP in order to pull this off. And we are going to assume we are obviously level 20. All of that stuff. All of our stuffs are maxed. We get a bunch of spell slots, damage, and hit points are low, but we have the ability to cast Armor of Agathis, so yeah, I mean, a bit more HP than that. Now on the first turn, or first round, I'd say Hound of Ill Omen, because the enemy then has disadvantage on saving throws, and the Hound has advantage on his attacks because he's next to you. It is next to you. You cast Dissonant Whispers as a 9th level. If it hits, and it probably will, because the target has disadvantage from the Hound, it's going to be 11d6 psychic damage. Then, as your reaction, you cast Booming Blade, which in total is 8d8 plus 7. So yeah, 5d8 from the... No, actually 1d8 from the Longsword, then 3d8 from Booming Blade, and then additional 4d8 from the moving portion of the cantrip. Then Hound as well has its action and reaction. On average, you deal 100 damage during round 1. Now, during round 2, you will cast Shadow Blade. Your reaction is going to deal a little bit more damage, averaging around 120. Round 3 is when we cast our final ability, final feature, Hexblade's Curse. We are pretty much maxing our damage at this point. Still casting Dissonant Whispers, we are burning through those high level spell slots. Averaging still somewhere around in between 120-125 damage. From round 4 to 5, we still have two 6th level spell slots, averaging around 100 damage, 90 damage, sorry. And then finally from round 6 to 8, we are a bit lower on the damage part, but still high enough to be somewhere in this range. Now obviously this is highly theoretical situation. This is probably not going to happen for the majority of the time. Most of the time you will probably be just casting Hound of Ill Omen, or maybe just casting Shadow Blade without even spending your spell slots on Dissonant Whispers, or maybe just casting your Hex spell, which is also a concentration spell, without Shadow Blade, Hound of Ill Omen, or anything. So yeah, this is just a theoretical max damage that you can pull off. Obviously, you have a bunch of other options at hand. You can use your bonus action to give your allies your Bardic Inspiration. You can Blade Flourish with your Bardic Inspiration. You can just use extra attack without any spells, anything. Well, there's no reason not to cast Hex if nothing else than just cast Hex, right? But yeah, I mean, you are pretty versatile with this build. Again, coming back to the point one, if your DM allows you to do the opposite of what Jeremy Crawford says, right? If I was your DM, I would let you, because for me personally, it really doesn't make sense that just a mere cantrip can somehow detect if the target that moves willingly or unwillingly. I mean, even like the forums or internet are full of people just I mean, sharing this opinion, right? Like, how does a cantrip know what the target thinks, right? The cantrip only can detect if the target moves its own legs, or the legs of the target are moved, or the target is moved by against its will, right? If something moves the target out of the position. So that's basically what the magic kind of, how I would interpret. And I'd still say like how a lot of other people would interpret this this cantrip, this spell, right? Now, with that said, if you like this build, even though it's a little bit more munchkiny, a little bit more controversial, a little bit more maybe even one-dimensional, even though you do have versatility in this build. Yeah, if you like this, you will like, share, comment and subscribe. Hit the bell button to get notified every time in the future I release a new video. And with that said, this is MinMax Munchkin again. Goodbye and see you soon.